Have you ever wondered why your body seems to act up during certain phases of your life, when nothing is technically wrong, yet you feel exhausted, restless, or emotionally off balance? Today, we're diving into a fascinating question. What if those physical symptoms aren't just random, but signs that your soul is trying to speak through your body? From the perspective of both modern neuroscience and ancient spiritual traditions, the body is far more than flesh and function. It's a bridge, a communication channel between your conscious mind and the larger universe around and within you. In energy medicine, Buddhist meditation practices, and Christian theology alike, there's a shared belief. Before your conscious awareness shifts, your body already knows. It's already reacting. Take Christianity, for example. In 1 Corinthians 6 verse 19, the body is described as the temple of the Holy Spirit. That's not a poetic metaphor. It's a powerful recognition that the body and soul are intertwined. The body is sacred. It holds divine presence. And when change begins on a soul level, the body is often the first to feel it. That's why we need to stop ignoring what the body is trying to say. Sleepless nights, tight shoulders, waves of emotion that seem to come from nowhere. What if these aren't just stress responses? What if they're part of a larger, more meaningful transformation? What if these are the first signals of a spiritual awakening? In this video, we'll explore how the body becomes the earliest and most honest messenger. When your consciousness begins to evolve, you'll learn why certain symptoms show up, how different traditions view this connection, and how to begin listening more deeply to what your body is telling you. And if this kind of content speaks to you, if you're curious about the deeper layers of healing, awakening, and mind-body wisdom, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. It helps support the growth of this channel and brings this message to more people who might need to hear it. Let's begin. If the body is the first place we notice spiritual changes, then here's the next piece. Awareness doesn't grow through thinking. It grows through energy. Now that might sound a bit out there at first. We're used to solving things with logic. That's what school teaches us. Think it through, analyze it, break it into parts. But when it comes to deeper awareness, that approach doesn't always work. You can't think your way into a shift in consciousness, because what's actually changing isn't your thoughts, it's your energy. Think of the mind as the tip of the iceberg. It's what we see and use every day, but underneath that is something more powerful, the energy that runs through the body and shapes how we feel, how we connect, and how we experience the world. That's where the real transformation begins. Have you ever had a strange dream that ended up coming true? Or felt disconnected from everyday life, like something inside you had outgrown your usual routine? These moments might seem random, but they can actually be signs that your energetic frequency is shifting. In simpler terms, your inner system is tuning into a new station, and the old one no longer feels right. Here's where science starts to catch up. Quantum physics, the study of the tiniest particles in the universe, tells us that everything is vibration. Every atom, every cell, even light and sound, all exist in vibrating states. So in that view, we aren't solid beings. We're made of energy that's constantly moving and interacting. And some scientists and thinkers now suggest that consciousness itself might also be a kind of energy field. It's not just brain activity, could be something more. A lot of people hear this and say, well, if it's energy, why hasn't science measured it yet? That's a valid question. But we need to remember, science doesn't measure what it can't yet detect. For example, gravitational waves, ripples in space-time, were only proven to exist in 2015. Before that, they were just theory. The Higgs field, which helps explain how particles get mass, wasn't proven until 2012. Just because we don't have the tools yet doesn't mean it's not there. Sometimes technology has to catch up with what we already sense. In the meantime, our bodies do pick up on changes. We feel it through tension, restlessness, or bursts of inspiration we can't explain. We might not have the words or the science to fully understand what's happening, but our system knows something's different, and that's important. So, no, consciousness doesn't open because you read the right book or figured something out with logic. It opens because your whole system, body, energy, awareness, starts moving in a new direction. It opens when you pay attention to what you're feeling, even if you don't fully understand it yet. If you're going through something that feels offbeat or hard to explain, that's okay. You're not imagining things. You might be in the middle of a real shift. The body knows, the energy knows, and sometimes the mind just needs a little time to catch up. Ever notice how the most restless nights often come during the most meaningful chapters of your life? It's not just stress or late-night screens. Sometimes, sleeplessness is a signal, not a problem to fix, but a message to decode. Sleep isn't just a break from your day. On an energetic level, it's a time of deep restructuring. While your body rests, your mind processes, clears, and, according to many spiritual traditions, receives. And for those going through a spiritual awakening, sleep can become less about shutting down and more about tuning in. A common pattern among people experiencing inner shifts is waking up consistently between 2 and 4 a.m. That's not random. Neurologically, it lines up with the brain's theta and delta wave cycles, states of deep rest where the boundary between the conscious and subconscious becomes thin. These are the windows where intuition sharpens, dreams carry symbolic weight, and the energy body is more open to receiving subtle information. Some call this the data download window, not in the sci-fi sense, but in a way that's just as powerful. You're more available to insights, guidance, and emotional clearing during this time, even if it doesn't make logical sense at first. There's an old story in the Bible about Jacob. One night, he dreams of a ladder reaching from earth to heaven, with angels moving up and down. It's a striking image, and whether you take it as literal or symbolic, it speaks to something many of us feel, that sleep, especially deep sleep, can be a bridge between dimensions of understanding, a place where human awareness and something higher meet halfway. I've heard countless stories that echo this. People who meet guides or unknown figures in dreams, only to wake up with a clarity they couldn't explain. Some change careers. Some walk away from toxic relationships. Some suddenly feel called to begin healing work, start writing, or make a leap they'd been resisting. The common thread? The dream didn't just feel like a dream, felt like a message. Of course, not every night of insomnia means a breakthrough is coming. Sometimes it really is just too much caffeine, or too little wind down time. But if you find yourself waking consistently at odd hours, with a strange sense of awareness or emotion, pay attention. That might be your system syncing with something bigger than your current schedule. So how do you work with this instead of resisting it? Start simple. Keep a notebook by your bed. The moments right after waking, especially from a dream, are golden. Your conscious mind hasn't fully kicked in yet, and what you write down might surprise you later. Patterns emerge. Symbols repeat. Even if the dream seems random, over time you might see connections to your waking life that weren't obvious before. Another practical step? Breathe. Before sleep, take 5 minutes to slow your breath and let your nervous system settle. Long, gentle exhales signal safety to the brain and create a smoother path into the theta/delta state. This helps you become more available energetically for whatever wants to come through the night. This isn't about trying to chase mystical experiences or force meaning into every dream. It's about being open, curious, willing to treat your sleep not just as downtime, but as part of your spiritual landscape. So the next time you're wide awake at 3:17 a.m., try this. Instead of reaching for your phone or counting the minutes until sunrise, ask yourself, what if I'm not being disturbed? What if I'm being invited? That shift in mindset alone might turn your sleepless nights into one of the most connected times of your life. One of the most surprising signs of an inner shift often shows up right on your plate. People going through a spiritual awakening don't always start with meditation or some big life revelation. Sometimes it's something as simple and as unexpected as losing interest in their usual favorite foods. Suddenly, that late-night craving for burgers or processed snacks just disappears. Instead, there's a quiet pull toward lighter meals, more water, maybe even fresh fruit or greens. It's not about forcing a diet. It feels more like the body is making new choices on its own. In Hindu and Ayurvedic tradition, this kind of shift is well understood. Food isn't just about nutrition. It carries energy or guna. There are three main types: sattvic, pure, light, and calming; rajasic, stimulating, fiery; and tamasic, heavy, dulling. When someone's energy is rising, meaning their inner state is becoming clearer or more aware, the body tends to reject tamasic foods like red meat, fried or stale meals, and overly processed products. It naturally starts leaning toward sattvic choices: clean, fresh, living foods that support mental clarity and emotional balance. This change often happens without effort. People report suddenly eating less but feeling more energized. They're not trying to restrict themselves. They just don't feel like eating the same things. The body becomes more intuitive, something many Eastern traditions call intuitive eating in its truest form. It's not about calories or macros. It's about energetic alignment. From a modern medical perspective, this makes more sense than it might seem. The gut isn't just a digestion center. It's part of a complex network known as the enteric nervous system, often referred to as the second brain. This system contains millions of neurons and communicates directly with the brain through the vagus nerve. That means when your consciousness starts shifting, your gut, both physically and energetically, feels it. Your appetite, your taste, even your sense of satisfaction from certain foods can all begin to change. What's really happening is a recalibration. Your system starts to prefer fuel that supports clarity and balance, rather than heaviness and distraction. It's like tuning up an engine. Cleaner inputs lead to smoother performance. And while this might look like a diet change on the surface, it's actually a reflection of something deeper. Your entire energy field becoming more sensitive, more aware, and more aligned. Of course, it's not about rigid rules. Not everyone becomes vegan. Not everyone gives up coffee or sugar overnight. But the relationship with food begins to shift. Eating becomes less about filling a void or numbing out, and more about nourishment, physical, emotional, and energetic. So if you found yourself pushing away foods you once loved, or feeling unexpectedly drawn to others, it's not just a phase. It could be your body's way of catching up with your soul. A signal that your system is tuning into a different frequency. One where food is no longer just fuel, but communication. A way for your body to say, "This is what I need now. This is what helps me grow." And the beautiful thing? If you listen, it usually knows exactly what to ask for. The third sign is this: when consciousness begins to expand, the brain's filters loosen, and suddenly, everything feels too much. Sounds seem louder, lights feel harsher, crowded spaces become overwhelming in ways they never did before. It's not that the world has changed, it's that you have. Your nervous system, once used to blocking out background noise and environmental input, becomes more open, more aware, and that sensitivity can feel like a flood. This isn't a flaw. In fact, it's one of the most common and least understood signs of spiritual awakening. Modern psychology has a term for this: highly sensitive person, HSP, coined by psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron. It describes individuals whose nervous systems are more responsive to subtle stimuli. They process information deeply, notice things others miss, and often need more downtime to recover from overstimulation. Notably, many people identified as HSPs also report feeling drawn to spiritual growth, intuitive practices, or energy work. It's not a coincidence. Sensitivity and awakening often walk hand in hand. Why? Because awakening isn't just about thinking differently. It's about perceiving more. And the moment your perception expands, so does your exposure to things you used to tune out. Emotional noise, visual clutter, artificial lighting, chaotic energy in public spaces. Suddenly it's all coming through, raw and unfiltered. There's a reason ancient texts hinted at this too. In Gnostic teachings, the idea that the world is an illusion points to the overstimulation of the senses as a kind of trap. For someone waking up, everyday environments, shopping malls, blaring TVs, constant digital chatter, can feel not just distracting, but almost like a subtle form of torture. As one Gnostic phrase puts it, to the awakened, noise becomes a delicate form of suffering. That's not exaggeration. It's what happens when the system becomes too refined for the usual chaos. But the good news is, you can work with this. Sensitivity isn't something to get rid of, it's something to understand and support. Start by being honest about your limits. If scrolling your phone before bed leaves you wired, it's not weakness. It's your system saying enough. Blue light from screens overstimulates the brain's alert systems and delays melatonin release, which means more difficulty sleeping and more jitteriness overall. Reducing exposure in the evening can make a real difference, not just in rest, but in how grounded you feel the next day. Nature helps too, a lot. Regular time in quiet, natural spaces has a recalibrating effect on sensitive systems. You don't need a mountain retreat. Just 20 minutes under trees or by water can reset your nervous system and bring your awareness back to balance. The sounds of nature, wind, birds, water, have a rhythm that our body knows how to sync with. And that rhythm is the opposite of digital overload. One of the best tools? Create a space that supports what your body and mind are asking for. That could be a corner of your home with soft lighting, no screens, calming scents, and items that make you feel safe. A kind of energy detox zone. Think of it as the spiritual version of a quiet room in a library. A place where your nervous system knows it can rest. And finally, don't pathologize your sensitivity. If loud places drain you, if you need more silence than you used to, if light and noise suddenly feel sharper, it's not because you're too sensitive. It may be because you're finally sensitive enough to notice what your soul's been asking for all along. This isn't regression, it's evolution. And with a few simple shifts, you can create a life that honors it. The fourth sign is perhaps the most intimate one of all. Your breath and heartbeat begin to shift, and not because of illness or anxiety, but because your system is aligning with a new rhythm. Can catch you off guard. You might feel your heart racing out of nowhere, or notice your breath becoming deep and full without effort, almost as if your body is breathing for you. These aren't random episodes. They're often signs that your heart, both physically and energetically, is syncing with a new vibration. In the science of energy, the heart is far more than a pump. According to research from the HeartMath Institute, the heart generates an electromagnetic field that is about 5,000 times stronger than the brain's. This field affects not just your own physiology, but also your emotional state and how you connect with others. It's why someone's presence can feel calming or overwhelming, even without words. You're not just reading them mentally, you're reading their field. So when your consciousness begins to expand, the heart doesn't sit quietly. It responds. It adjusts. Tries to catch the beat of this new awareness. What feels like heart fluttering or unusual breathing can actually be the body's way of syncing with this deeper intelligence. It's a process, one that moves you from thinking to feeling your way through the world. This isn't a new idea. Across spiritual traditions, the heart is described not just as an organ, but as a center of wisdom. The Sufis speak of the heart as the seat of divine love. In Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah sees the heart as a vessel for spiritual light. In Christian mysticism, saints and mystics often referred to the heart as the place where God speaks directly. Different languages, same message. When you want to listen deeply, not just to the world, but to what's moving within you, you listen with your heart. And here's where it gets practical. There's a technique called heart coherence breathing, developed through years of biofeedback and neurological research. It's simple but powerful. You breathe in slowly for about 5 seconds, and exhale gently for the same count, all while focusing your attention on your heart area. After a few minutes, your heart rate begins to stabilize, and the signals it sends to your brain shift into harmony. This isn't just calming. It helps bring your whole system into alignment. You begin to think more clearly, feel more centered, and process emotions more fluidly. What this practice does is create a feedback loop between your breath, your heart, and your consciousness. It helps anchor those energetic shifts you're already feeling and turn them into grounded, embodied awareness. So if your breath has felt different lately, or if your heart seems to beat louder during moments of stillness, don't dismiss it. It may be your energy system waking up, your heart adjusting to a new level of perception, and your awareness stepping into a space where feeling, not thinking, is the main source of truth. You don't have to force anything. Just notice, support it with breath, and trust that your heart, this powerful, intelligent center, knows how to lead the way. The fifth sign is one that often gets overlooked. Strange, physical sensations that seem to come out of nowhere. Tingling, warmth, sudden chills, waves of pressure, or what some describe as an electric current moving through the body. These aren't always signs of illness or imbalance. Sometimes, they're signs that something deeper is turning on. These sudden bursts of energy are often linked to the activation of the subtle energy channels in the body, known in Eastern traditions as nadis or meridians. When these pathways begin to open, especially during periods of inner growth or spiritual awakening, the sensations can be intense and confusing. It might feel like your body is reacting to something invisible, and in a way it is. In yoga, this process is described as Kundalini awakening, the rising of dormant energy located at the base of the spine. When this energy begins to move upward, it activates each chakra, energy center, along the spine, often producing a wide range of physical responses. Heat in the lower back, tingling up the spine, pulsing in the forehead or hands. These are common signs that energy is moving and realigning itself. Of course, the rational question many people ask is, could this just be a neurological issue? And that's a fair concern. Yes, some of these symptoms can mimic nerve disorders, anxiety, or other medical conditions, which is why it's always wise to rule out physical causes first, especially if the sensations are distressing or persistent. But here's the distinction. When these physical sensations happen alongside a clear shift in awareness, like heightened intuition, emotional clarity, deep insights, or an unexplained feeling of connection to something larger, then it's likely not just a neurological quirk. It's energetic. It's part of a larger transformation. The thing is, energy awakening doesn't always look graceful or mystical. Sometimes it looks like restlessness in the limbs, buzzing under the skin, or a sudden temperature shift in a perfectly calm room. You might feel electricity running through your hands with no external cause, or a magnetic pull around your chest or head. These sensations don't follow the rules of biology as we know them, but they often follow the patterns of energetic awakening, described for thousands of years across different spiritual systems. Think of it like this. When your system is upgrading, the circuits have to adjust. That adjustment can feel strange, even uncomfortable, but it's not always a sign something's wrong. In many cases, it's a sign something new is becoming available. So how do you work with it? First, don't panic. The more anxious you get about what you're feeling, the more tension you create in the system. Breathe deeply. Ground yourself. Simple movement like walking barefoot on natural ground or placing your hands in cold water can help regulate the energy and calm the nervous system. Second, observe. These sensations often follow a rhythm or show up in response to inner work. After meditation, journaling, therapy, or even emotional breakthroughs, the more you pay attention, the more you'll see the connection between your internal world and these physical responses. And finally, don't rush the process. Energetic awakening isn't something to chase. It's something to respect. The body knows what it's doing, even if the mind doesn't understand yet. So if you've been feeling strange physical currents lately, and they've come with deeper insight, stronger emotion, or a growing sense of purpose, trust that this may not be random. It may be your energy waking up, your system recalibrating, your awareness shifting from thought to experience. Have you noticed changes in your skin, hair, or nails lately? Maybe dryness, sudden breakouts, hair shedding, or even a natural glow that seems to come out of nowhere. If so, you're not alone. And no, it's not always just hormones, weather, or diet. Sometimes these outer shifts are actually the body's way of reflecting something much deeper happening inside. Changes in the skin or hair are often dismissed as purely cosmetic or biological. But from an energetic perspective, they can be early signs of cellular restructuring, the physical body adjusting to higher states of consciousness. In other words, your outer layers may be reacting to an inner purification process already in motion. According to quantum cellular medicine, the body isn't just matter, it's made of energy, light, and vibration. Our cells are in constant communication with one another through electromagnetic signals. So when your energy frequency increases, as it often does during periods of emotional healing or spiritual awakening, your cells begin to respond. That can show up in detox-like symptoms, skin sensitivity, changes in texture, shifts in hair growth or loss, or brittle nails suddenly growing faster or changing in quality. It's not always comfortable. In fact, this process can look like regression before it looks like progress. But in many cases, it's a form of deep recalibration. The body is clearing out what no longer aligns with its new frequency, and sometimes that shows up at the surface. There's also something symbolically powerful about this. In Christian theology, the story of Jesus' transfiguration describes his body glowing with radiant light on the mountain. For many, it's more than just a supernatural event. It's a metaphor for energetic transformation, a moment where the body reflects the soul's evolution. And while most of us won't literally glow in white light, the idea holds: when the inner world changes, the body follows. That's why it's important not to overlook these signs or rush to fix them with harsh treatments. Instead, see them as invitations to support your body through this shift. Think of your skin, your scalp, your entire physical shell as a living interface for what's happening at the cellular and energetic level. So what can you do? Start simple. Stay hydrated. Your cells need water to release old patterns and rebuild in a cleaner state. Support this with anti-inflammatory foods, things like berries, leafy greens, turmeric, and omega-3s that help ease the stress on your system while it adapts. And consider treating your skin and scalp with care. Natural oils like jojoba, coconut, or sesame not only nourish the surface, but also help regulate energy through gentle, grounding touch. Most importantly, be patient. This isn't just about looking better, it's about integrating who you're becoming. Your body isn't separate from your spiritual growth. It's a mirror of it. So if your skin is breaking out, or your hair is behaving differently, take a breath. Don't judge it, listen to it. Transformation is rarely tidy, but if you look closely, even in the small changes, you'll see the signs. Your body is evolving, one cell at a time, to reflect the energy of who you're becoming. The seventh sign is one of the most powerful, and one of the most misunderstood. A sudden surge of emotion, or the return of memories you thought were long buried, can feel like a wave crashing in out of nowhere. You're going about your day, and then, out of the blue, you're overwhelmed by sadness, anger, grief, or even joy so intense it knocks the air out of you. Or maybe a memory from years ago resurfaces with startling clarity. Not just the image of it, but the feeling. You don't know why it's coming up, but it is. In the world of energy therapy, this isn't random. Emotions aren't just passing moods. They're energy stored, unprocessed, and often trapped in the body's tissues when we suppress or avoid them. These unresolved emotional patterns form what some call trauma loops, energetic feedback cycles that subtly influence how we think, react, and relate to others, often without our awareness. When your consciousness begins to expand, when higher layers of awareness start coming online, these old emotional imprints begin to rise to the surface. Not to punish you, not to drag you backward, but to be seen, to be released, to make space for something new. Carl Jung said it clearly, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That quote lands differently when you're in the middle of this process, because that's exactly what's happening. Your system is pulling up what's been running in the background, what you've been carrying silently, often since childhood, so that you can finally stop reacting from it and start healing it. This kind of emotional surfacing can feel intense, overwhelming even, but it's not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that something real is happening, something deep. Your body is clearing space, your energy is reorganizing, and like a house that's being renovated, things can get messy before they get beautiful. Here's what's important to remember. You don't need to analyze every emotion to heal it. You don't need to figure out the exact memory or its meaning. You just need to feel it, to witness it, to allow it to move through, rather than resist or suppress it. Some people cry for what feels like no reason. Others find themselves needing more solitude, or feeling emotionally raw in a way they can't explain. That's okay. That's part of the unwinding. When emotional energy has been locked away for years, it doesn't just disappear with one insight. It needs to move through tears, breath, writing, movement, or silence, whatever allows it to come up and out. One of the most healing things you can do during this phase is create space to feel without judgment. Sit with what arises. Breathe into it. If you're not sure what to do, try writing it out without censoring yourself. Or meditate. Not to escape the emotion, but to let it pass through with presence. This isn't about staying calm all the time. It's about being honest with what's there and learning to hold it gently. This kind of emotional release is also a sign that your nervous system is beginning to trust the process. The body only lets go of old wounds when it feels safe enough to do so. That means if you're crying unexpectedly or remembering things you haven't thought of in years, your system might finally be ready to heal them. In the end, this isn't emotional instability. It's emotional integration. You're not falling apart. You're actually falling back into yourself, into the parts of you that have been waiting patiently to be acknowledged. So when the waves come, when the tears hit, or the old stories resurface, try this. Don't fight it. Don't rush to fix it. Just be there for yourself, fully, softly, like you would for a child who's finally ready to tell their story, because that's what this is. A release, a remembering, and a return to wholeness. So here's the truth many of us were never taught. What you're feeling might not be a breakdown. It might be a breakthrough. Across cultures, timelines, and belief systems, there's a thread that keeps showing up. Human consciousness is evolving. In Buddhism, it's called awakening. In Christianity, it's renewal of the spirit. In Greek mythology, it's the hero's return to the true self. In quantum physics, it's the expansion of awareness beyond classical perception. Different languages, same core message. We are more than biology, and the shift we feel mentally, emotionally, physically is not random. It's part of the process. That's why the physical symptoms we've been exploring, sleepless nights, changes in breath, emotional waves, food sensitivity, even strange energy sensations, shouldn't be dismissed as just stress or just hormones. They may be those things, yes, but they can also be much more. They can be signs, the body's way of pointing to an inner transformation already underway. We've been conditioned to think of healing or awakening as something that happens in the mind, But more often, it begins in the body. The body keeps score, yes, but it also keeps memory, intuition, and wisdom. When your cells start shifting, when your nervous system begins to open to new frequencies, the body becomes your guide, not your enemy. And that's the shift I invite you to consider. You don't need to panic when your experience no longer fits the old categories. You don't need to rush to define every sensation or symptom, and you don't need to force answers from a place of fear. In fact, the wisest response might be the simplest one. Slow down, listen, observe, let your body speak. Let your awareness adjust in its own time, because spiritual awakening is not a goal to achieve. It's not a list to check off. It's a way of living, one where your physical body, emotional truth, and energetic presence are all part of the same conversation. If you're in the middle of this process right now, let this be your reminder. You're not alone. You're not broken. And you're not going backwards. You're being invited into something deeper. Not to escape life, but to experience it more fully. Not to bypass the body, but to understand it as sacred. Not to abandon reason, but to expand it to include intuition, energy, and mystery. This isn't a disorder. It's a door. And every breath, every sensation, every weird moment might just be a step through it. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. It's a small click for you, but it helps this content reach more people on the path of awakening. Thanks for being here.